Unicorns. We've all heard of them. Mythical creatures that we believe don't exist. But what if they did exist? Well, they do in the automotive world. Unicorns exist. They're the products that we don't believe actually have ever existed or were ever here, but are some of the most amazing products you can ever find when you finally do find one. A lot of automobile companies out there have created unicorns, and we've all tried to chase them down. But finding them is similar to that of finding a real-life unicorn. We just can't seem to grab hold of that one horn and hold on to it just to show people that yes, this product does exist, and it was amazing. Unicorns, a mythical creature, but in the automobile world, they're mythical products. Welcome back to the AutoLooks podcast. I'm your host, as always, the Doctor to the Automotive Industry, Mr. Everett J, coming to you from our main host website at AutoLooks.net. If you haven't been there, stop by, check it out, read some of the ratings, check out some of the reviews, listen to some of our other podcasts, and go to the Corporate Links website page. Big or small, we have them all from the Corporate Links website page on AutoLooks.net. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So like we said in the intro, unicorns. We all know, well, not 100%, but unicorns really don't exist today. But in the automotive world, they actually do. And unicorns are some of those mythical creatures that we've all tried to track down. We've heard about them, but we have never actually found one. And the funny thing is I actually own one of those unicorns, and it sits in my driveway all the time. And in my home city, there's one of 2 of these. And, well, in my home country, there's less than 1,000 of them. May not seem like an actual unicorn, considering the fact that there's over 1,000 of these things still in existence today. But in the past, there actually have been a few decent unicorns. Vehicles that were so great, but never sold in high amounts. And today, they're some of the most sought-after vehicles from the past. And we're going to talk about some of those great ones today on the AutoLooks podcast. Going all the way back to the original introduction of the Jeep. Everybody always remembers that Bantam made the Jeep, and then Willys bought the Jeep outright and created it for itself. But if you didn't know this, Ford actually built a Jeep for the American military. Considering the fact that Bantam didn't have enough money or the facility to build these, they trademarked their product and sold off the rights to them to both Willys and Ford to help with the production of these products for the American military. So everybody already knows we can find Bantam Jeeps and we could find the original Willys Jeeps. But finding a Ford Jeep is even harder because Ford did make them. 1941 Ford GP was a Jeep by all means. Ran with the Ford motor, ran with Ford production parts, but was still utilized in the American military and utilized there as a basis of the original Jeep. It did exist, but try and find one today. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, similar to that of the 1963 Volkswagen Aquila Gullwing. This was a supercar that Volkswagen built in 1963. You can only be found in South American marketplaces and a few in Europe. But this is at a time, 1963, when people were thinking of the Carmagia, the Volkswagen Beetle, and the microbus. That's all they built. Well, Volkswagen went out and built an actual supercar to go up against products like the Lamborghini Miura. Hey, they saw a marketplace and they wanted to go after it. Unfortunately, nobody likes the Volkswagen name and it wasn't sought after. Similar to that of one of their products from the future, the Volkswagen Phaeton. Now, back in the early 2000s, Volkswagen had an idea to create an extended platform sedan. They wanted to build a sedan off the Audi A8 platform for the Volkswagen product lineup. And we all know they had the Passat built off the A6 platform, but Volkswagen wanted their own extended vehicle. And they thought there was a marketplace with people with lots of money who didn't want to be seen. This is similar to what Louis Vuitton is like. He drives around in an old school Peugeot 307. Now, it's a GTI, fully blacked out windows, but you wouldn't think anything else like it. You wouldn't think someone like Louis Vuitton is driving that car down the road. You just think it's a regular Peugeot, and you wouldn't even try and take their picture because it's like, there's no one famous in that. It's just an average car. Similar to that, how Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook, drove around in his original Volkswagen Golf for decades. lights. Why? We don't want to be known of. A lot of vehicles like this have been created over the years. Some of these high-class invisibility vehicles in the Volkswagen Phaeton and later on Fidian were vehicles like that. They allowed the high-end clientele to be essentially invisible while driving down the road. Unfortunately, not enough people saw that, as the American marketplace is more about flash than hiding, so the Phaeton was eventually pulled from the American marketplace and completely dissolved, even though it could be had with a W8 or even a W10 motor. Now, this is the same thing that an Audi A8 and an Audi S8 have underneath the hood. Power on demand, making it one of the most powerful Volkswagens ever sold, and the most powerful Volkswagen sedan ever sold. This thing had more power than an Audi R8 and a sedan platform. So you could see how this would work itself into being a unicorn for the future. Another one of those great unicorns from back in the 70s. Now, if you remember back in the late 60s and into the 70s, and even it started teetering off in the 80s, we had the Ute market, or as I like to call it, the crossover utility truck market in the North American marketplace. Now, Utes have been around in Australia for a long time, and until Ford and General Motors completely abandoned that marketplace about 10 years ago, Utes were still in existence over there. Now they're completely gone from most major marketplaces. But in 1976, both Cadillac and Lincoln, under their Continental brand, created Ute-style trucks. They actually had a 1976 Cadillac Mirage, which was an Eldorado with a pickup truck rear end. A pickup truck Cadillac, before the Escalade EXT ever existed. Now, this is something that you only hear about and you think was just a concept. See, that's one of the amazing things with some of these great unicorns, is we all think they're concepts, like the one that's in my driveway. A fully body-on-frame, four-wheel drive, V8 powered Kia model. You would never think V8 powered and body-on-frame, or even four-wheel drive, in any saying with the word Kia, especially if you live in North America. But for one singular year, in 2009, Kia gave us the Borrego, or as it's called elsewhere in the world, the Mojave, selling just under 20,000 in the United States and 1,500 in Canada by the time all of them have been sold on dealer lots 5 years after their release in 2009, and only being on the marketplace for 1 year. These were actually some of the best built Kias you'll ever find. Their body-on-frame construction makes it so they can handle nearly everything you throw at it. Their towing capacity was that of most mid-sized pickup trucks at its time, and its V8 power plant gave it the power you wanted. Now, just a word of the wise, if you ever find a V8 powered Kia Borrego, stay away from it. The V8s were actually the very earliest model of the Tau V8s that you now find in the Genesis models. Those V8s are a lot better today, but when it was in the Borrego, it was a test product. But the body-on-frame construction is very similar to the Bongo pickup trucks that you would find in Asian marketplaces. Same with the V6 that rode underneath the hood. These were all tried, tested, and true vehicles. The Borrego was set out into the marketplace as a giant killer. Yes, I did say that right. A giant slayer. It was set out to take on the likes of the Expedition, the Durango, the Tahoes, and take them down a notch for less money. This beast was able to do that. Unfortunately, its life was short-lived, and with less than 15,000 of them still in existence in North America, they still rank as one of the most sought-after Kias that you would ever think to find. Yeah, and I own one of them. Imagine that. Back in the 80s, rally racing was getting into a brand new tier. And for that, it was similar to that of stock car racing. You had to build dedicated models for the road. And in 1985, Ford decided to release the RS200. Eventually, this would just be paved over, and they can go back to using the Ford Escort as their standard rally vehicle, but they wanted to build a brand new Class 3 rally car, similar to that of the Lancia Stratos and the Audi Quattro. Ford wanted to dominate rally racing, and the RS200 became it. But due to homologation issues, they had to build a certain amount of them. And today, finding an original Ford RS200 will set you back tons. They're one of the most sought-after Ford performance products of all time, even more so than Shelby Mustangs, because they were so limited in their production and so powerful, and being one of the only mid-engine rear-wheel drive layouts Ford ever sold. These power products are something that everybody wants. But from that, Ford had another counterpart, Mercury. And you may not know this, but Mercury's always had a Mustang equivalent. We all know the Cougar was there. But in the 80s and even into the early 90s, the Mercury Capri, not the Capri that you think of in Europe, but in North America, they had what they called the Capri, which is essentially a Ford Mustang in Mercury layout. The nice thing with the Mercury versions is it could be had with a T-top, unlike the original Mustangs. And its fastback styling made them look even better. Where Ford had the McLaren edition of the Mustangs, Mercury had the Capri RS. And the Capri RS was its dedicated performance product. You won't find a lot of these because everybody all goes after Mustangs. Unless you're talking about the Mustang 2, then seriously, no. But the Mercury Capri was one of those amazing vehicles. It was a counterpart, similar to that of the Dodge Challenger and Plymouth Cuda. The Capri was more than just what the Firebird was to the Camaro. The Capri was a full-on counterpart to the Mustang. When you couldn't afford a Mustang, you can get the Capri. And for that, you could still get a product that was just as capable as the original Mustang. One of my two favorite products from the 1980s, and two that you would never even think did exist, but did in fact exist, was the Dodge Dakota Sport and the Caravan Turbo. Now the great thing with the Dakota Sport is until the Jeep Gladiator came back, the Dakota Sport was one of the only ever production convertible pickup trucks ever sold in North America. And I remember seeing these things when I was a kid. Looking back at it, it was an amazingly neat product. A convertible mid-size pickup truck? Nobody would ever think of doing something like that. Well, Dodge did. Ford considered getting into it, but considering the fact that Dodge only did it for 1 year, the market really wasn't that big for it. But today, finding a Dakota Sport convertible is really hard. Same with the Caravan Turbos. If you go to a car show and you show up with a Caravan Turbo, people are just going to look and laugh at you. They'll be like, oh yeah, who cares about old crappy minivans? We saw them, we had them, whatever. But the Caravan Turbos were Carroll Shelby's introduction to the minivan marketplace. He said, I want to make a minivan go fast, and I want to make a minivan fun. The other great thing of the Caravan Turbo is it came with a 5-speed, not automatic, floor-mounted stick shift in a minivan. So when you blow the doors off of an IROC Z Camaro with your mom's minivan, people start questioning it. Today, finding a Caravan Turbo from 1989 is one of the hardest things to do, considering the fact that Caravans, in all right context, just like the old Plymouth Reliance and Dodge K cars, were all thrown away. They were junk pieces of garbage. Nobody wanted them and nobody wanted to keep them. So finding one makes them even harder today. That's the main aspect of a unicorn. They're not as easy to find today. Similar to that of the GMC S10 Cyclone and Typhoon, the introduction of the performance pickup truck and SUV marketplace. Long before we got our Durango SRTs or even the RT Dakotas, the S10 Cyclones and Typhoons were showcasing to the world power in a small form. Sports cars are one of those neat things that have so many unicorns within them. And that's a great thing with them. There are so many out there that you would never even think ever existed. Before the BRZ, Subaru had the SVX. And if you didn't know this, Isuzu, a company associated with pickup trucks and SUVs, and only those types of product, originally sold vehicles in North America. Back in the 80s and into the early 90s, Isuzu actually had sports cars and even sedans. And the Isuzu Impulse RS, one of the products that I actually considered buying back when I was in college, was it. And if you ever see one with its half flip up lights, it's basically just got to lift its eyelids up to open its eyes, makes it not only a unicorn in the Isuzu world, but makes it a unicorn in a 90s sports car. Similar to that of the AutoZone AZ1 from Mazda or the Toyota Serra, gull wing and scissor cut door operational key sports cars. And these were even sold in North America. You can find them here. These were sports cars that we didn't think existed here, but did exist here. And finding them is almost like finding a V8 powered TVR. It's power, it's fun, and it's amazing. There were some amazing products back in the day. And if you really didn't know this, Honda, big old Honda, actually got into the SUV world before it ever released the CR-V. It had the Crossroad and the Passport back in the 90s. The Crossroad was built off of a Land Rover Discovery platform for 1993. And in 1998, the Passport was built off the Isuzu Amiga platform. They weren't built by Honda, but Honda knew that the SUV marketplace was there. Unfortunately, their first forays into these markets didn't bode well for them, and it really wasn't until the CR-V's introduction that we actually saw Honda as being able to build a proper CUV for the market. Now, unicorns have come in every major size, performance factor, from all kinds of different car companies. Finding a unicorn from a company that once existed and was taken over by another is one of those as well. The Asia Rocksta was an original Jeep formation from Korea, which eventually got taken over by Kia and sold as a Kia, but in '94 it was the Asia Motors. But going back to the beginning of the SUV world, we had the Escalade. And the original Escalade, if you didn't know this, was essentially a Yukon Denali with a Cadillac logo. That's all it was. 1998. Cadillac Escalade. That's all it was a Yukon with a Cadillac logo. Hell, you could see this in the Gone in 60 Seconds from 1999 with Nicolas Cage. That's the vehicle the one kid gets shot in. That's an original Escalade. You think it's a Yukon? It's actually the Escalade. It was there. It existed. But like I said, unicorns have been here, been around. There's so many different ones. Turning a police interceptor into a muscle sedan like the Mercury Marauder was. Giving Opel their own Speedster as the Opel Speedster built off of the Saturn Sky platform. Rover giving us a coupe right at the end of its lifetime, the Rover 75 Coupe. Now, if you want to talk about some of the biggest pickup trucks that ever existed, the International MXT was the biggest full-size pickup truck you can ever be had on the marketplace. A transport with a dedicated box on it. It was a truck for people who wanted trucks. One of my favorite categories right now is active lifestyle vehicles, the ALV marketplace. The ALV marketplace has actually been around for a very long time, and people don't understand that. Going back to the early 2000s, we start to see products like that, and Honda was one of the early adopters to the ALV marketplace with both the ZDX and the Accord Cross Tour marketplaces. They showcased to us that we don't need an actual hatchback CUV in a box form to have a CUV. We could have something that gives us more of a sedan or a coupe profile in a CUV. BMW did it in the X4, but a ZDX is actually a well-built product that you don't find very many. It was the original RDX, and its profile is something that's more accepted today than it was back in 2012. One of my last great unicorns that you can find, last two, I'll get into them, was Mitsubishi's last foray into the pickup truck market in North America, along with Suzuki, two companies that arrived a little late to the midsize pickup truck marketplace. Mitsubishi in the early 2000s had the Raider pickup truck built of the Dakota, and Suzuki wanted to get into the pickup truck marketplace as well at that same time. And they built the Equator off of a Nissan Frontier platform. That's all it was, the Nissan Frontier with the new front end, similar with the Mitsubishi Raider. The funny thing is the Raider actually looked better than the Dakota platform it was built off of. But finding a Raider or even an Equator today is hard. I almost got an Equator when I got my Borrego, and I'm actually still kicking myself for not getting it, considering the fact of how well built the Frontier was and how rare owning an Equator would have been. It would have been a really cool truck to have, similar to that of the Hummer H3T. The H3 came out right at the end of the line for the Hummer brand, but the H3T was a truck form. It was an actual dedicated mid-size pickup truck to go up against the likes of the Ford Ranger. But it came out, one, at a time when SUVs and the Hummer brand was on its way out, and two, when the mid-size pickup truck market was on its way out, similar to that of the Raider and the Equator as well. My last favorite unicorn, and one you would never think exists, well, maybe a little bit more so today, but back in 2012, Reich from Geely created the Z5, one of the original coupe models to ever come out from China. Now this is 2012 when the coupe product range was still kicking around, but the Chinese marketplace was just starting to grow, and people weren't looking at coupe vehicles. They were looking at sedans. They were looking to get tons of people into driving sedans into the Chinese marketplace. And soon the CUV marketplace would blow up on their scene as well. But Reich wanted to showcase to the Chinese marketplace that you can have two-door fun as well. There was a very small niche of the marketplace that wanted two-door fun, and Geely wanted to go after it. Although only lasting a very short time, the Z5 eventually kicked the bucket, and with it, the coupe product range from all Chinese manufacturers. Something we wouldn't see until the Hosan Neta Z came out just last year. Coupes may be coming out again, but in that marketplace, they're not. So finding an original coupe product from the early 2000s from China is a unicorn all into itself, because you didn't even think a Chinese manufacturer would even build that vehicle. Unicorns. You may think they never existed, but they did. And a lot of the products that we've talked about have existed, and they're harder to find. They all come from standard brands. That's the funny thing. You're thinking like high-end supercars, well, there's only a few of them built, but everybody knows about those cars, so they just become a sought-after product. Everybody considers the Lykan Hypersport to be a true unicorn because it's so rare and so many people want it. They think seeing one is like seeing a unicorn, but there are so many average vehicles out there that fall into the unicorn classification as well. Hell, how many of you have ever seen a Caravan Turbo? How many people listening here right now have actually seen a smart roadster? Seeing them is believing that they actually exist. Similar to if you actually saw a real-life unicorn. These products did exist. They were amazing products from their car companies. And although they lived a very short lifetime, the theory behind them was that they were amazing products for an amazing world. It's unfortunate that the world didn't see them as who they really were. Today, there's collectors out there looking for these unicorns, and trying to find them is getting a lot more expensive. Unicorns. Have you ever seen one? Hell, have you ever owned one? Send us an email over at email@autolooks.net and tell us about the unicorns that you've seen, heard of, or even owned in your lifetime, all on the autolooks.net website. So if you liked what you heard, please follow, like, send out, and comment about this podcast on any of the major streaming sites or social feeds that you have found the AutoLooks website and podcast on. All from myself, Everett J, at the AutoLooks.net website. And after you send this out, after you send us a comment and share this podcast with all your friends, head on over to the website, check out some of the ratings, check out some of the reviews, find some new car companies on the Corporate Links website page, and even read some of our children's books, because we actually do have a few books that we've made for my own children, all on the AutoLooks.net website. The AutoLooks podcast is brought to you by Ecom Entertainment Group and distributed by Podbeam.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, send us an email over at email@autolooks.net. So for myself, Everett J, the whole AutoLooks podcast team here, strap yourself in for this one fun, wild ride that these unicorns are going to take us on.